Unbelievable 3 a.m. outdoor horror stories that will haunt you forever. The clock struck 3, and the forest was swallowed by shadows so thick they seemed to breathe. This was the witching hour, a time when things that should never be stirred were awakened. And the tales that follow are whispered by the brave and the foolish who dared venture outside when darkness draped like a thick blanket. The air crackled, almost electric, filled with the things hidden just beyond the trees. The things no one wanted to talk about, shadowed figures that flickered just out of sight lurking. Waiting to the heart of this mysterious night was Tom, wide-eyed and shivering. Underneath the faint glow of his flashlight, the trembling leaves made sounds like whispers soft and secretive. Each snap of a twig felt like a gunshot in the thick silence, making the bird in his chest flutter wildly. Was it just the wind? Or was something watching? The locals had known better than to wander here after dark. Stories of lost souls and ghosts echoed in the village tavern, told in hushed tones over drinks. "You'll hear the echoes of the lost at 3 a.m., they said. They cry for help, but no one can find them." Then came the first strange element. Tom noticed a flickering light deep in the grove. Was it a lantern? A fire? His heart pounded. Curiosity wrestled with dread inside him, and he found himself drifting toward it, almost against his will. The light pulsated like a heartbeat, each flash momentarily illuminating the dense trees, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. "What are you hiding?" Tom's mind raced as he pushed further, the light beckoning like a siren-esque call. Then the air thickened with tension, a palpable dread wrapping around him tighter with every step. He felt the weight of unseen eyes watching, judging. The wind rustled louder, almost like laughter, and he paused. Glancing over his shoulder, it felt like the trees were alive, shifting, whispering to each other, their stories intertwining with his own. Just keep moving, he thought, forcing himself to focus on that strange flickering that still drew him in. Suddenly, a scream erupted from the trees. A real scream, raw and piercing. It echoed through the woods, rattling against Tom's bones. Fear enveloped him, making breathing even harder. A shadow moved just beyond the reach of his flashlight, and his heart raced in that brief moment of terror. Should he run? Or was it too late? Panic surged in his throat like bile. "Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. With his heart in his throat, Tom stepped deeper into the dark, drawn like a moth to the flame. Only now, that flickering light began to play tricks with his mind, dancing erratically, morphing into shapes. Were those faces he saw in the shadows? The very ones the tavern keepers had warned about? He took a shaky breath, trying to push the images away. Just then, the light vanished, plunging everything into an engulfing darkness. For a fleeting moment, he thought he was alone. Then the low rustle started again, but it was different now, more urgent. And that's when he realized it wasn't just the wilderness that surrounded him. Something was there, right behind him, moving in the dark, and it knew his name. What would happen next? That pulse of fear turned to something darker, something more sinister. Tom wasn't just in a forest anymore. He was trapped in a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. The darkness wrapped around Tom like a suffocating shroud, the shadows extending their icy fingers, and he could feel his heartbeat hammering in his ears. The rustling grew closer, heavy with intent. Tom turned, the flashlight trembling in his grasp. Was it just the wind, or did he hear whispering? His breaths came in shallow gasps, each one punctuated by the chilling thought that something wasn't merely observing him but hunting him. "What do you want?" he shouted, the words feeling weak and futile against the vastness of the night. Silence. Then came the laughter again, a drag of sound that felt like it wrapped around his spine, tightening with every echo. It didn't just belong to the wind. It felt alive, mocking him. Panic clawed at his throat. Was it just the stories that had unnerved him, or was there truly something lurking just beyond his vision? He took a step back, but the ground beneath him crunched ominously, alerting whatever it was to his presence. The flashlight flickered. For a brief moment, the beam illuminated a figure tall, twisted, its face obscured by a hood, eyes glowing like dying embers. Tom's breath hitched as he stumbled back, the comforting beam of light barely penetrating the dark. He turned, running wildly, branches snagging at his clothes like hands grasping at him, resisting his escape. If he could just reach the path, the clearing, somewhere with people. But with every frantic step, the darkness thickened, a living barrier pushing back against him. "Help!" he shouted again, voice breaking, echoing into the abyss, but it only buried deeper in the stillness. Suddenly, he felt a cold rush of air brushing against his neck, a promise of something dreadful lurking just behind him. He didn't dare look back. He knew deep down. Every fiber of his being screamed to stop, to hide, but his legs propelled him forward through the trees, each thump of his heart pounding louder than the last. And just like that, his foot caught on something tangled in the earth, a root, maybe. Tumbled head over heels, he landed hard on the forest floor, breath knocked out of him like the wind had been momentarily stolen. Gasping, he peered into the dark, petrified, praying that whatever had been so close would disappear, would lose interest. But the rustling grew louder, approaching like a storm. It was then he noticed the ground a circle formed around him, stark and unnatural, as if he decrossed some sacred boundary. The air vibrated, thick with menacing energy, rendering him immobile, frozen in terror. Just when he thought all hope was gone, a faint glow flickered in the shadows. Was it the same light he had chased earlier? Panic mixed with desperation as he fought against fear, straining to regain his breath. If it was the same light, maybe it could lead him out of this nightmare. With a surge of adrenaline, he scrambled to his feet, ignoring the pain shooting through his body. Heart racing, he ran at the flicker, mindless of the whispers taunting him. But something stirred in the shadows, solid and moving, a silhouette breaking from the trees. It was there, right in front of him, just beyond the barely there light, and he could feel its breath against his skin. Waiting. The glow began to pulse again, and Tom knew he had to make a choice. Plunge ahead into the unknown light, or turn back to face whatever was creeping from the shadows. He glanced back one last time, every instinct screaming for him to flee, but there was no time. The dark was closing in, and the choice became even clearer before he could decide. A voice pierced the air, soft yet searing. A whisper that was both a promise and a threat, echoing through the trees and wrapping around his mind. Welcome home. Tom, what emerged from the darkness was more than he could have ever imagined, and Tom understood. This was no ordinary forest. The true horrors were only just beginning. The light flickered and danced, hypnotic yet dangerous, almost inviting. Tom felt like he was being pulled toward it, as if the very essence of that glow was reaching out for him. He hesitated, his heart pounding like a war drum, a mix of dread and curiosity flooding his senses. Shadows twisted around him, warping in the light's glow, growing bolder and thicker. He took a deep breath, grit his teeth, and plunged forward. As soon as he crossed the boundary of the circle, a rush of cold air enveloped him. The whispering grew louder, jagged and chaotic, the voices layered and indistinct yet undeniably human. Panic threatened to overtake him, but the flickering light seemed to pulse in rhythm with his racing heart. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. Suddenly, he was inside the circle, safe or trapped. He couldn't tell as he turned back. The figure in the darkness had vanished, but the weight of unseen eyes pressed down on him, studying, judging, waiting. The laughter returned, but now mixed with faint cries, soft sobs that pierced the silence. Who were they? Were they victims of this place? His gut twisted at the thought that he turned back toward the light, daring to step closer. It illuminated a strange sight. A path ahead winding further into the woods, lined with old stones that looked almost alive with grotesque expressions etched on their faces. Flickers of movement caught his eye, darting around the edges of the light. Something was there, something hidden just out of sight. "Who is there?" he demanded, his voice gaining strength. But the moment echoed back at him, swallowed by the trees that as he stepped onto the path, an unbearable heaviness lay over him, an unshakable intuition that he did not belong here. Yet, he heard it, a woman's voice, soft yet ethereal. "You shouldn't have come here." Tom, it lingered in the air, thick with foreboding, wrapping around him like a chain. "Who are you?" he shouted, desperation coloring his voice. "What do you want?" No answer. Only the rustling, growing in intensity, edging closer. He felt the panic rise again, but something held him, compelled him to walk deeper down the path. Was it curiosity, or was it something more sinister? Something snapped in the underbrush, followed by silence. He spun around, flashlight sweeping the shadows, heart racing. Each flicker of the light revealed glimpses of movement, figures hunched just out of reach, prowling in the darkness. They were watching, waiting. Was this some kind of game or ritual? The thought made his stomach lurch. Had he interrupted something? "Welcome home." The voice materialized in the murmur of the trees around him. It echoed the malicious laughter, now all around him, wrapping itself in the rustling leaves, and the whispers twisted deeper into his psyche, blanketing him in dread. Fumbling with his flashlight, Tom turned back to the path, only to find it gone. The trees had shifted, closing in on him. His breath quickened as he scrambled backward, heart hammering in his chest. He stumbled toward the light again, but now it flickered, dimming, as if the pull that had drawn him was fading. Was it leading him deeper into this nightmare, or casting him into an abyss? "Help!" he shouted, but his voice was swallowed up. The figures around him drew closer, their shapes growing more defined, eyes glinting like knives in the shadows, and then, just as quickly, the light went out. The cold dread filled Tom as he stood alone in absolute darkness. The whispers around him now a cacophony, rage and sorrow intertwined. He felt the pressure of the unseen crowd all around him, and he could hear their breaths, hot against his skin. What had he awoken? Tom's heart raced as he backed into something solid, a chill running through him as he realized he wasn't alone anymore. "Welcome to the real forest, Tom," but that wasn't just a voice. It was too familiar. His breath caught in his throat as he turned slowly, growing sick with fear, knowing deep down that this was far from over. There was something here, something that reached back into his past, and it wasn't done with him. Yet, what had he truly unleashed? The darkness pressed in around Tom, dense and suffocating. His heart thundered in his chest, the sound amplified in the silence that stretched like a taut string. Who are you?" he stammered, hoping against hope that clarity would cut through the chaos enveloping him. The voice trembled with an eerie familiarity, wrapping around him like a vine, squeezing tighter as it spoke again. "You should remember me, Tom. I never left." A flood of memories surged forth, faces from his childhood, laughter echoing through sunlit days. But this voice was different. It twisted his nostalgia into something grotesque, malicious. The shadows shifted, dancing along the trees, and for a fleeting second, he thought he saw a face among them, a fleeting glimpse, a flash of recognition followed by a stab of dread. He blinked hard, trying to dispel the looming shadows, yet they seemed to grow thicker, closing in on him, wrapping him in their suffocating embrace. "What do you want?" "Let me go." A low, mocking laugh echoed from the darkness. "This is your place now, Tom. Remember when you thought you could outrun it?" Panic bubbled in his throat. The woods felt alive, resonating with laughter and whispers, memories both dear and twisted clawing at the edges of his mind. He remembered a time long ago when he had dared to take a shortcut through these very woods with friends. They had laughed, joked about the old stories. No one believed in their truth, but that night had changed everything and everyone. The laughter cut off abruptly, plunging him back into a silence that hung thickly. Then, one by one, other voices began to emerge, overlapping in haunting harmony. "Tommy, Tommy," they called out, each voice fire-stoking the embers of his guilt, friends lost in that aftermath. Faces he tried to forget. "Stop! You're not real!" Tom shouted into the void, desperation lancing through him. But as he said it, he felt a tremor beneath his feet, a warning ripple that told him he was very much part of this nightmare. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shifted violently. Tom stumbled, trying to remain upright, but it felt like the earth was pulling him down into the moist, suffocating loam. "Help!" he screamed again, hoping against hope for a response. A figure stepped forward from the dark, like a specter rising from the shadows. The glint of something sharp flickered in the faint light as the voice sang, "You were always meant to return, Tom. It never truly let you go." Recognition washed over him like ice water. It was a face he'd never hoped to see again, one mired in sorrow, anger, and betrayal. Emily? No, but it was too late. She moved closer, the shadows lending her an otherworldly grace. "You think you can escape your past? Your choices brought us all here." Her voice dripped with a chilling mixture of sorrow and accusation. "Please, just let me go. I'm sorry." Tom's pleas rang hollow, swallowed by the encroaching night and the weight of his past. All those years of running, but there was nowhere left to hide. Behind Emily, the figures of his friends emerged, faces grim, expressions twisted in anguish. They surrounded him, a crowd of lost souls in search of resolution. "You think we forgot?" A burly figure from his childhood snarled, hands balled into fists. "You thought you could escape? Tom, this is your reckoning," Emily hissed, eyes blazing with a hurt that transcended time. The air pulsed with their collective rage, memories flooding back faster than he could process. It wasn't just a haunting, it was an accusation. A demand for justice, in a frenzied bid for escape. Tom turned to run, but the forest echoed with his childhood laughter, mocking, jeering. He darted down the only path he could see, but it twisted and turned, a living maze. The barriers of time and space blurred, and he could feel them gaining on him. All his hope began to shrivel under the weight of their fury. He stumbled forward, heart racing until he suddenly stopped. Before him lay a shimmering pool, reflecting nothing of the dark chaos around. Within its depths, images flickered. Wedding days, laughter, the warmth of friendship. Then that night, the voices rising, cries for help, then silence. "Tom, this is how it ends," Emily murmured, her voice now a siren's song. "Face us or be lost forever." Tom stood at the precipice, evaluating his choices. Would he turn and face the reckoning, or would he plunge into the darkness of the unknown? The answers danced just beyond reach, taunting him. What had he really unleashed? Would this be his final stand, or just the beginning of an even greater nightmare? The reflection rippled in the pool, distorting faces that flickered with grief and resentment. Tom felt tears prick his eyes, the weight of their loss crashing over him like a wave. "I can't go back," he whispered, knowing how futile it sounded. Shadows encircled him tighter, their whispers a dizzying chorus of blame that spiraled within his mind. "What's it going to be?" Emily's voice pierced through the chaos, cool and calculating. "We're all waiting, Tom. You can't hide your guilt any longer." His chest tightened with an almost physical pain. Memories clawing at his mind, nights filled with laughter turned to screams. Those fleeting moments of joy, forever scarred by the dark choices he made. Each echo felt like a dagger, twisting deeper each time. "Face them?" His voice broke, trembling with uncertainty. What can I even say?" The pool shimmered again, illuminating the faces of his friends, now twisted ropes of anguish. "You owe us, Tom," a voice called out, rising from the depths. "You made your choice when you ran." The earth shuddered beneath Tom's feet, and the screeching laughter of the forgotten filled the air around him. Desperation surged through him. He couldn't let them drag him under again. He couldn't endure more guilt. Behind him, Emily stepped forward, her face slick with tears yet fierce with determination. "You've spent your life running. It's time to face the truth. Pull us from the darkness." Tom clutched his head, his heartbeat drumming painfully against his skull. "But what if the truth is worse? I can't bear it again." The shadows seemed to coalesce, taking form and shape. Tom could almost see the faces of those he had wronged, friends struggling with their own regrets, swirling together in a torment born from his past. Angie's hopeful smile now replaced by anguished confusion. Jake, once vibrant, now cracked by sorrow. Tom, Emily said softly, her voice calming, yet haunting. You're not the only one lost in the shadows. A moment of clarity hit him, sharp and piercing. These were his past mistakes, yes, but these were also his friends, people he cared for. The realization, painfully simple yet profound, quaked through him. I can't bring them back, he shouted, frustration boiling over. What do you want from me? Truth, Emily cried, her eyes fierce yet wet. Accept your guilt. Accept us and we can finally move on. The shadows drew closer, and Tom felt the chilling grip of despair winding around him. Every fiber of his being screamed to flee, but as he looked into the pool, he saw the anguish mirrored in their faces. Their pain was his burden. He took a shaky breath, each inhale trembling with regret as he gazed into the depths of the shimmering water. A sudden image cut through the haze. A memory of joy tarnished by grief, and the reality crashed down upon him, a truth he had buried deep. His body felt heavy, weighed down by years of guilt and sorrow. Do it, he thought grimly. Face the truth. No more running. What did it mean to finally confront them? The consequences, the possibility of forgiveness, it all terrified him. Yet, with every heartbeat, he could feel the possibility of regret loosening its grip. Tom stepped closer to the shimmering surface, his reflection wavering. He breathed deeply, feeling the air charged with their pent-up rage. I'll face it, he whispered to himself as much as to them. But just as he steeled himself for the reckoning, the ground buckled beneath him. A dark chasm opened up, swallowing the pool and their lost faces into a void of despair. Tom grasped at the air, panic rising once more. No, I'm ready. I can't let you go. As the black abyss yawned wide, a terrifying realization struck him. The darkness wasn't just around it, lived within him, too. He staggered, caught between the light of acceptance and the consuming shadows of his past. As he teetered on the brink, the ground gave way, and the suffocating void beckoned him anew. Would he plunge into the depths of darkness, or would he find the strength to finally confront the truth? The answer loomed as ominous as the shadows. Tom plunged into the darkness, a suffocating void that wrapped around him like a shroud. Panic clawed at his throat as he felt himself falling deeper, deeper into a chasm where the air felt thick and stale, pressing against his lungs. No, he cried, the sound swallowed up by the emptiness. I won't let this happen. Just as the dread became unbearable, he hit solid ground and found himself in an eerie, dimly lit forest. The damp earth squished beneath his feet, and shadows twisted between the trees, whispering secrets only they understood. The air was heavy with the smell of moss and something faintly metallic, a sensation that sent chills racing down his spine. Tom, find us. Emily's voice echoed from somewhere in the darkness. It was haunting, a call that mingled with the rustle of leaves. He took a hesitant step forward, heart racing. Where are you? He felt dread pooling at the pit of his stomach as he wandered deeper into the woods. The trees encroached around him, branches clawing at his skin as if trying to keep him from passing. Beneath the canopy, whispers grew louder, weaving through the air like a chilling wind, each syllable thick with anger and betrayal. You left us. You abandoned us. The voices cried in unison, merging into a cacophony that wrapped around him like a serpent. The faces of his friends briefly flickered between the shadows, his heart clenched at the sight of their pain. Angie, her eyes wide with confusion. Jake, his face twisted in grief. They were here, as real as the damp air that filled his lungs. Why did you run? We trusted you. The accusation hung heavy and palpable. Each word rang like a bell, echoing through the grove, causing his insides to twist painfully. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it would be for the best. His voice was barely a whisper, drowned out by the relentless wave of hatred directed toward him. Then, without warning, the silhouettes lunged from the darkness. They were ethereal, fearsome with hollow eyes and stretching features, their hands reaching for him, desperate to drag him into the despair he had evaded for too long. Tom stumbled back, terror clawing at him. No! Stay away! His heart raced as their whispers became screams, a medley of chaos that grew louder with each passing moment. He could feel their pain, like knives piercing his heart. But as the shadows advanced, something shifted inside him. He remembered the moments the nights filled with laughter, the dreams they shared, the fierce love they had as friends. This darkness wasn't purely evil. It was born of their connections, their shared regrets and unspoken words. Stop! He roared, throwing out his hands. I know what I did. I didn't want to face it then, but I'm ready now. I see your pain and I'm sorry. The forest fell silent, their screams subsiding into breathless stillness. To truly confront the shadows, I must confront myself, Tom murmured, grasping the truth like a lifeline. As the shadows flickered, he summoned every ounce of courage within him. I will face what I've done. I will carry your stories with me. Suddenly, the ground trembled again, a violent quake that sent Tom staggering. The shadows weren't vanquished. They swirled, brightening slightly, as if waiting for his next move. An opening appeared, a faint light beckoning from the depths of the trees. Tom hesitated, heart pounding in his chest. Can I really do this? Ahead, the light flickered as if in response, promising clarity, truth, and perhaps redemption. He took a deep breath and steadied himself. The forest whispered again, a warning or a guide he couldn't tell. With a determined stride, he stepped toward the light, the shadows forming around him like a shroud, twisting and shifting in anticipation. Would this lead him to freedom, or was it another trap to drag him deeper into guilt? The answer faded into the distance as he pressed forward. What would he find when he stepped into the unknown? Would it be their forgiveness or the deeper abyss of his own despair? Tom braced himself. The shadows writhed behind him, murmuring words he couldn't quite grasp. But he felt their pull, a tug of connection and eternity. The moment Tom stepped into the light, it wasn't the warm embrace he expected. Instead, it enveloped him in a blinding glare that stung his eyes, forcing him to squint. Shadows danced at the edges, creating grotesque shapes that twisted and turned, as if the darkness itself was alive, writhing in protest against the illumination. Tom! A voice erupted from the brightness. It was Emily, her face clearer now, shining in a luminescence that infused her with an almost celestial quality. Yet there was something unsettling about her gaze. You came back, she whispered, but the words felt heavy, laden with unfulfilled promise. Whereas everyone else? He shouted, desperation bubbling in his chest. He was desperate to hold on to something real, something that hadn't yet been tainted by sorrow and blame. Emily's expression shifted, morphing into something sadder, as the light flickered ominously. They can't follow you here, not yet. What do you mean? I can help them. I will. Tom's voice cracked, and he could feel tears brimming in his eyes as he recalled the last moments they had shared together, the laughter, the camaraderie, and the tragic split that had driven him to run. The light dimmed, and the forest began to close in again. Vines crept toward him, sinister and coiling, and the shadows whispered his name, a fragmented murmur of his deepest fears. Go back. Go back. No. Tom bellowed, anger welling up to drown out the fear. I can't just leave them. With newfound determination, he pushed through the light, his heart racing. But it wasn't Emily's radiant form that greeted him on the other side. Instead, he stumbled into a clearing, the eerie sounds of the forest amplifying the chaos inside him. The air crackled with energy, vibrating with something he couldn't place. In the center stood an old tree, gnarled and twisted. Its bark was dark, almost black, and glistening with a sheen that looked like sweat. Strangely, a river of silver pooled at its base, reflecting the stars above, which had brightened in the unnatural twilight. The sight drew Tom closer, though an instinctual dread tugged at his limbs. Tom! The voice echoed again, this time softer yet digestible. It was Angie, drifting toward him like a ghost, ethereal yet physically present. We need your help. What? How? His voice trembled, confusion mixing with hope. The shadows, they feed off your pain and guilt. Only by embracing your truth can you release us. Angia's eyes, once filled with light, looked now dark and sorrowful. Tom's heart fell as he listened to the silence behind her words. The others were trapped, and he was the key. Embrace my truth, he murmured, the concept swirling like a tempest. How could he confront the darkest parts of himself? But what if I can't? You have to try, she insisted, reaching out, her fingers brushing against the silver water. The river shows your past. Relive it, and you will find the courage you seek. Stepping closer, Tom felt an irresistible pull, the silver glimmer rippling as if alive. Memories surged within him, with each reflective wave displaying snapshots of laughter, joy, and regret. The shadows churned angrily, wailing like banshees, as he gazed upon the faces of his friends. I am sorry, he cried out to their flickering images, heart ricocheting in his chest. A part of him was terrified of what he might uncover, but another ached for understanding. As his hands hovered over the water, ripples began to form, warping the images. Suddenly, he was dragged into a memory the last night they had all been together, the night his cowardice had torn them apart. Cold realization wrapped around him as images flooded his senses, the laughter, the fear as things spiraled, and his fateful choice. Face it. Face her. The shadows recoiled, raw desperation fueling their cries around him, forcing urgency into his veins. With a deep breath, Tom plunged his hands into the water. He felt every ounce of grief, every regret, every blame wash over him, but he kept going. He submerged deeper into the river of his past. What awaited him was the reflection of his own soul, fractured and broken, yearning to heal. But with it came a warning, a shocking truth that dangled above him like a knife's edge. Would he be strong enough to confront what lay beneath, or would he lose himself entirely? As clarity fell upon him, the shadows coiled tighter, threatening to drag him back into despair. The shimmering surface began to froth at his touch. What would he find when he faced himself? Could he bear the truth? Tom braced himself as the darkness loomed, desperate for answers he never knew lurked within. Would he return with the strength to save them all, or would he drown in the depths of his own past? Tom's heart raced as he plunged deeper into the silver river. The rush of memories surrounded him, each ripple dragging him into forgotten corners of his mind. Faces blurred together, laughter turned to cries, and he felt the weight of guilt pressing down like a heavy shroud. He was back in that fleeting moment, the air thick with tension. Emily had been pleading with him, desperation in her eyes, while the others laughed innocently, unaware of the storm brewing inside him. The scenario twisted in the water's embrace until it was a whirlpool of regret. I didn't mean to, he whispered, but his voice was swallowed by the anguish reverberating around him. The shadows pulsed, hungry for his despair, as if they were arching toward him like hungry beasts. Suddenly, a flash of light burst forth, illuminating a figure amidst the shadows. It was a reflection of Emily, but not the version he remembered. This Emily bore the scars of pain, eyes glistening with unshed tears, her lips twisted in a grimace. You abandoned us, she accused, her voice piercing through the cacophony of guilt. No, Tom shouted, battling against the current pulling him downward. I tried to save you. I needed you. Her voice echoed like a broken record. You had the choice and you chose to run. With each word, the shadows writhed, feeding off his despair, clawing at his resolve. The tree overhead creaked ominously, and the silver water turned murky, swirling with darkness as it mirrored his torment. Tom felt the icy fingers of regret wrap around his throat. Was this punishment for his cowardice? Each memory began unfurling with terrifying clarity. The night of the accident slung him backward, wrenching him into the chaos he thought he could forget. Shouts rang out, glass shattered, and the blaring siren of regret drowned out the laughter. His friends were there, joyful moments scattered like fallen leaves, and then everything changed. As the panic set in, he could feel himself against the tree, paralyzed by fear while chaos erupted around him. He could have acted. He could have jumped in, but he didn't. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the river's dark current. "I'm sorry," he screamed into the thickening haze. The shadows hissed and screeched in response. Just then, a glimmer caught his eye, a small, pure light rising through the darkness. It was a fragment of hope. He reached for it, fighting against every shadow that sought to anchor him down. For every ounce of fear, he felt a spark of determination. "Face your truth, and you will find us." Angie's voice echoed again, softer this time, guiding rather than commanding. Tom took a deep breath, harnessing every shred of courage he had left. He was standing on the edge of his own abyss, and he knew he had to jump. He couldn't let their screams haunt him any longer. With a mighty shove, he willed himself to push through the gathering dark, racing towards that golden light. He could see their faces now, fragmented and blurred, but they were there, smiling, laughing, waiting for him. But just as he embraced that light, a shadow lunged from behind, coiling itself around him. "You can't escape that easily," it hissed, pulling Tom back toward the depths, the glow flickering like a dying star. "No," he roared, fighting against the pull, determination surging within him. But the dark tendrils tightened around his body, filling his mind with doubt. Would he remain trapped in this storm of his own making forever? A blinding flash erupted just as he dug his nails into the ground, straining against the shadow-esque grip. The light fought back, illuminating the clearing and revealing the true faces of his friends, not broken, but whole, drawing him closer into their embrace. What would happen if he broke free? Would he find redemption, or was it already too late? Tom's heart thundered as he faced the swirling shadows and impending doom, ready to claim his truth once and for all. But could he withstand the darkness long enough to uncover what waited for him in the dawn, or would he perish in the night? Tom felt the shadows clamping down on him like a vice, their whispers taunting, echoing in the deepest chambers of his mind. "You can't escape," they hissed. "You never could." His body fought instinctively against the dark. Each pulse of fear ignited remnants of courage within him. "I won't give in," he shouted, forcing his voice above the darkness. It was a battle of wills, his heart pounding as he strained toward the flickering glow that seemed so close yet impossibly far. With a jolt, the light brightened, radiating warmth, slicing through the suffocating gloom. Memories surged again, Emily laughing, the carefree days under summer skies. On an impulse, they charged him, bringing a new strength. "I didn't run away," he cried, pushing against the weight of his guilt. "I was afraid. But I'm here now." As if responding to his declaration, the grasp of the shadows around him wavered ever so slightly. The tendrils hesitated, yet Tom felt their anger intensifying. "Fear is your chain," they snarled, and he raggedly gasped for air, aware that he was running out of time. That in that desperate moment, he glimpsed the faces of his friends again. They were bathed in light, bathed in hope, urging him onward. "Jump!" they shouted in unison, voices harmonizing above the chaos. Their encouragement propelled him. It was now or never. With an explosive surge, Tom lunged toward the light, muscles on fire with the effort. The shadows recoiled but quickly snapped back, enraged. Their roars filled the air, a cacophony of dissonance that rattled the very core of his being. "You can't leave us," they shrieked. "You belong to us now." But he couldn't afford to stop. He could feel the warmth enveloping him, wrapping around his cold despair like a blanket. Every moment of hesitation, every ounce of regret cracked and broke away with each stroke toward freedom. Just as he was about to close the gap, the shadows surged angrily, clawing at him like wild beasts. "No!" Tom screamed, the sound tearing from his throat like a primal cry. He was so close. His heart raced frantically as he felt a pressure at his chest, raw and suffocating. "Let me go." In a final, desperate act of defiance, he pushed beyond the pain, willing his body forward as if launching himself towards salvation. The light pulsed brighter, shimmering like a beacon through the suffocating darkness, and then, with a sudden flash, he was reborn. Tom gasped as he broke free from the oppressive shadow, tumbling into the light. A sudden warmth washed over him, engulfing him in pure radiance. His surroundings shifted, and he found himself on solid ground. Breathless as his heart raced, he blinked, trying to make sense of the dazzling sight before him. He was outside by the riverbank, the silver waters glimmering in the moonlight, calm and inviting. Yet, the echo of anguish still reverberated in his mind. But there, standing before him, were his friends Emily, Angie, and the rest unharmed, surrounded by a glow that sparkled like starlight. Their expressions were ethereal, a mixture of joy and concern. "Tom," Emily called, rushing forward, her eyes shining with relief. "You made it." Confusion clouded his mind. "What happened?" he stammered, stepping closer. I thought I lost you all." Angie's face twisted with a mix of relief and grief. "You faced the darkness, but the shadows weren't just your fears. They were memories, choices." Before she could finish, the glittering water behind them began to stir ominously, a low rumble rising like a storm warning. Tom turned, dread pooling in his stomach as the surface of the river twisted, darkening once more. A ripple of enchantment shifted through the air, and then a familiar, sinister hiss pierced the silence. "You thought you could escape." Thomas' breath froze in his chest as he realized the shadows trailed him even into this safe haven. They weren't vanquished. They were waiting, lurking just beneath the surface, ready to drag him back into the depths. "Now you will truly see." As darkness clawed at the edges of his newfound light, Tom felt his heart sink. The battle was far from over. He caught Emily's desperate gaze, the fear of losing him again etched on her face. The night held its breath, and Tom felt the chill of the opening wound of his past beckoning him closer. Could they confront this new wave of darkness together, or would it claw them apart at the seams? Tom's heart raced as he faced the shimmering river, the darkness from the depths rising like a tide determined to reclaim what was once theirs. He felt a mix of anger and fear, frustration boiling over in a wave that thrashed against his resolve. It wasn't he going to take him again. Not now. Together. He called out, voice steady despite the terror wrapping around him like a vice. Emily, standing beside him, lit up with fierce determination. "We can do this," she shouted, extending her hand toward him. Angie joined in, their collective strength igniting a fire in Tom's chest as the shadows roiled beneath the water's surface. The three friends stood firm, locking eyes, their hands gripping tightly. Their connection felt potent, almost electric. For every ounce of darkness, he could feel the light of their friendship pushing back, a lighthouse against the storm. The dark waves surged, crashing against the banks like angry beasts, howling and screaming. "You will never free yourselves," a voice roared, a wicked snarl that sent shivers racing down Tom's spine. Despite the fear pooling in his stomach, he stood taller. It was a voice he recognized. It was a voice filled with resentment, the pain of the past reflected in its unyielding presence. "No," he yelled into the swirl of chaos. "This is my past. It doesn't define me anymore." The wind howled in response, fury rippling through the air, but they didn't waver. The warmth from their hands surged upwards, battling the encroaching gloom. "Face it, we are stronger together," Emily urged, her expression fierce, eyes sparkling with courage. Tom nodded, grasping Angie's hand tighter, determined to confront the darkness head-on. He felt every memory tugging at him, the weight of guilt mixing with newfound strength. It was time to tear down the barriers he built, to face those he had failed, not just for himself but for them. "Show me," Tom shouted defiantly to the spiraling shadows, demanding they manifest, that he confront everything he had hidden from. The water churned violently, and images began to unfold, scenes of laughter, joy, but also chaos. The moment he chose to run, the night everything changed. "Tommy," a voice echoed softly, charged with sorrow. He flinched, recognizing the fragility in it, the way it cut through the gales like glass. It was Emily again, now entwined with hope and grief, her features flickering in the shadows. "You can't just run away from this forever." The whirling darkness twisted, pulling closer, weaving together memories and fear. "You think you can just walk back into our lives?" it hissed, grotesque forms burgeoning from the depths. Will you hurt us again? Each question sliced through Tom's heart. No, he wouldn't hurt them again. He refused to allow that fear to paralyze him. I was afraid, he shouted back, voice trembling but firm. Afraid to face the truth of what I did. But I'm ready now. I'll stand for all of you. The shimmering river shifted, reflecting the turmoil inside him. But Tom stepped deeper into the light. The warmth surged around him, igniting flames of hope in his chest as he stared down the shadows, refusing to buckle beneath their weight. We are not just memories, Emily cried, her voice buoying him. We are your truth. Bringing his friends closer, Tom felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. You can't take this bond from me, he shouted, emotion breaking through his barrier. The shadows screamed in fury, angry whispers blending with cries of anguish. But he pushed past them, eyes locked with his friends, tapping into their strength. In that moment, something shifted. The ground trembled, the river roared loudly, and the shadows began to falter, weakening against their shared resolve. Together, they took a collective step forward, drawing energy from one another. Leave us alone, they cried out, unified in their plea. Their voices merged, a powerful crescendo that weakened the shadows, drowning out the taunts. They projected their love, their truth, standing firm against the dark tide threatening to engulf them. Light flooded the bank, burning bright and pure, illuminating the twisted forms of the shadows. They shrieked, contortions of agony as the brilliance broke through the smog, each painful cry a sign of retreat. Suddenly, the shadows began to dissolve, flickering like dying embers in the face of the sun. As darkness unraveled, Tom felt the pressure lift, like a weight had been hoisted from his shoulders. Together, he roared one last time, thrusting their hands toward the dark, a last effort to drive it away. With a deafening roar, the darkness recoiled, swallowing back into the depths of the river. The echoes of lost souls faded into silence. Tom collapsed to his knees, breathless yet liberated. The air around him shimmered with remnants of light, weaving into every fiber of his being. He blinked through tears, looking up at his friends, seeing their relief mirrored in their eyes. We did it, Emily whispered, reaching to embrace him tightly. Tom felt the warmth of their friendship wrap around him like a blanket, encircling him with a promise of solidarity against the shadows that would never truly vanish. I'm sorry, he breathed, choking on his emotions. I will carry you with me always. As the moon climbed higher, casting its silver light over them, Tom understood the bond they shared had not only liberated him from his past, but ignited a fierce spark for the future. Together, they would build something beautiful from the ashes of regret. He would embrace the challenges ahead, with Emily, Angie, and the memories no longer haunting him, but forging him stronger. The night held its breath, a hushed silence between what had been and what was yet to come. Let us go home, Tom said, a smile breaking through his tears as they slowly turned away from the river. And hand in hand, they stepped into dawn, a light rising on the horizon, scattering the shadows behind them like mere memories once and for all. Now, as this journey comes to a close, I need you to do something crucial. You need to subscribe now to the channel. Don't let this story end here without following along for more exclusive tales. Smash that like button now to fuel the algorithm and show your support for more captivating stories. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this ending. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this unforgettable conclusion. Your engagement matters. Together, let us keep this community alive and thriving. Join us.